Welcome to the official model documentation for Market DNA. You can access further documents and models via the portal at marketdnaedge.com. Before proceeding, we must establish the operational constraints. Leverage above 10 is strictly prohibited, and you must never allocate essential personal funds to these parameters. XAG, the standard ticker for spot silver. The exact date and time code of this reading is March 18, 2026, at 0930 GMT-5. GMT refers to Greenwich Mean Time, which establishes our standard temporal baseline. We are logging this data under cycle ID XAG_3_1. The full organizational designation is XAG Cycle 3 Phase 1. The asset currently resides in operational Phase 1. Consequently, the following parameters function solely as a predefined static visual artifact. We are stripping away all technical analysis and subjective interpretation to document the mathematical architecture exactly as it stands. This chart displays the primary visual artifact for Phase 1. As you can see, the price action is overlaid with a specific geometric structure, composed of two lower red triangles and an upper blue trapezoid. Within this structure, the normal scenario pathway follows a sequential chronological order, moving from Phase 1 to 2 to 3, and finally to Phase 4. However, the parameters also define an alternative scenario pathway. In this configuration, the phases trigger out of standard numerical order, progressing from Phase 1, jumping to Phase 3, then returning to 2, before concluding at Phase 4. Looking at the first red triangle, we identify our primary entry coordinate, designated as M. This is locked at the exact numerical value of 76.1151. Moving to the bottom vertex of that same red triangle, we locate the secondary entry coordinate, labeled PC, which sits at 67.0833. The PC coordinate operates under rigid conditions. It is an optional node that may or may not be reached by the asset's price, and both M and PC belong exclusively to Phase 1. By combining the values of M and PC, the model calculates a strict mean entry point of 71.5992. The overarching time duration allocated for this entire structural setup is dictated by the blue trapezoid above, spanning exactly 30 days. Therefore, Phase 1 serves strictly as a foundational risk management state. It is required to establish absolute baseline constraints before the model permits any subsequent phases to begin. We begin with the third triangle domain percentage, calculated by multiplying 2 by 14.56%, yielding 29.12%. The assigned risk coefficient is 1. Multiplying the domain by this coefficient locks our final risk domain parameter at 29.12%. The baseline hypothetical capital assigned to run this documentation model is $100,000. The model utilizes a strict contract size of 10,000 ounces of silver. Against that hypothetical capital, the parameters enforce a strict maximum expected drawdown limit of 5%.
Applying the 5% constraint to the $100,000 capital establishes a $5,000 limit. Subtracting the 29.12% risk domain from our 71.5992 mean entry sets an absolute price floor of 50.7495. This sequence of formulas mathematically protects the model. It establishes an inflexible, hard-coded risk ceiling before a single fractional position is sized. Dividing the $5,000 drawdown by the difference between mean entry and expected low price yields 239.8 ounces. Dividing this by the 10,000-ounce contract gives a 0.02 position size. Having that dictates exactly 0.01 for each trade size. Presenting this each trade size output is a mandatory structural requirement of the Market DNA model. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size. These fractional outputs define a zero-discretion environment. Every position size is entirely subordinated to the geometric and capital laws of Phase 1. Returning to the visual chart, we map our structural objectives. Target 1 is at the lower boundary of the blue trapezoid, at 77.4. Target 2 is precisely at apex N, locking in at 87.12. Target 3 lies at the topmost boundary, recorded at 95.57. We calculate the expected profit for Scenario 1. This path assumes only the primary entry at M is triggered, with a full exit occurring at Target 3. The expected total profit calculates to exactly $1,945. Measured against our $100,000 hypothetical starting capital, this produces an expected return of 1.94%. When annualized based on the 30-day duration, it normalizes to a 23.6% expected annual return. Scenario 1 documents the baseline mathematical trajectory. It represents the objective outcome if the market follows the most direct route through the mapped geometry. Scenario 2 documents a more complex, multi-entry outcome. Here, we calculate the profit of the primary entry exiting at Target 3, running concurrently with the secondary entry exiting at Target 2. The model aggregates the $1,945 from the first entry and the $2,004 from the second. This produces a total expected profit of $3,949 for Scenario 2. As recorded in the documentation, this combined outcome equates to an expected return of 2.95%. When normalized across the yearly timeline, the expected annual return for Scenario 2 calculates to 35.89%. It is essential to recognize that no interpretation or forecasting is applied to these figures. They operate solely as strict mathematical eventualities, dictated entirely by which geometric nodes the asset strikes. The remaining question is structural. Will the data dictate the next progression is Phase 2, or will the alternative pathway trigger Phase 3? Until then, the model remains in a neutral state of observation. We are simply navigating the market, waiting to register what observable event occurs next within these defined parameters.